Hi everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the young adult librarian with the Twin Lakes Libraries and I use they, them pronouns. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about books featuring fae, fairies, elves, all that good stuff. Because I was trying to think of what to do for this episode. You know, we've done so many and you should definitely check out the playlist for the backlog of all the Must Read Monday videos. So I was trying to think of things to talk about, and actually two of the books I'm currently getting through have to do with the Fae. And I was like, you know what? I always love reading books about the Fae. It's kind of my favorite subgenre of fantasy books is books about Fae. So I've read a lot of those, and I have a lot of recommendations. So that's a perfect theme. And you know, some of these books I've talked about before if you've watched previous videos, but some of them I haven't talked about. So I'm going to start out with the ones I am currently reading and then get to the ones I have read before. So I'm actually listening to Master of One. And this one, when I first tried to pick it up and read it in the print copy, I was just having a really hard time. And I've come to realize over the past year or so, I've gotten so used to listening to books or reading books on my phone that I'm having a hard time picking up a physical book and reading it. So, it wasn't working for me in print format, so I started listening to the audiobook and I'm really into it. I am probably 2/3 of the way done, but this is kind of off in a fantasy world where in this book, the humans had actually defeated the Fae, and they think that all the Fae are dead, but spoiler, they're not. So let me just read you the little book summary. Life in the Queen City isn't easy, especially for a 2-bit thief like Rags. When his latest score goes sideways, he's nabbed by royal sorcerer Morian the Last, who forces him to steal the 6 pieces of an immensely powerful ancient Fae relic. Rags is still determined to somehow get away unscathed until he discovers that the relics Morian is after are actually people. A distractingly handsome Fae prince who has been asleep for centuries, a Queen's Guard deserter with more honor than common sense, a daughter of a disgraced noble family who hits first and asks questions later, a deceptively sweet-natured prince, a member of the underground resistance, neither trusting nor trustworthy, and him, Rags. There's no way they can let Morian enact his dark plans, but 6 misfits against an exceptionally wicked enemy doesn't make for generous odds. Luckily, Rags is not generous, he's smart, and he has a plan that just might work. So, Rags is kind of the main character, but you do get point of view chapters from the other characters. He's very rough around the edges, likes to swear a lot and say inappropriate things, but he's kind of been on his own and has this shell around him and his emotions and doesn't want to open up and trust others. But as I'm getting through the book, he's starting to feel things again and be more vulnerable, and I really love it. The Fae Prince, I have to say, his name is Shining Talon, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, that's just part of his name actually. It's a really long name, but everyone calls him Shining Talon. And so yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really glad I gave it a second chance. So hopefully y'all will also check that out. And in the video notes, I'm also going to include which of these books are available on the different library apps. Next is A Dark and Hollow Star, which I love this cover. So cool. This is one of the characters, Nausicaa, who is a former Fury and is now living in the human world. And yeah, so there's a lot going on, so I'll read you the little dust jacket thing, but I'm about a little over 50% in. This is another book that I tried to read it in print format, and I could not, I don't know why, but I just can't concentrate these days when I pick up an actual book. So I read the ebook. I'm reading the ebook right now, and it's working for me, which is, anyways, I'm just weird. But yeah, so this one is set in Toronto, Canada, which is cool. I haven't read many YA books set there. And basically in the city, the Fae have like kind of integrated into human society, kind of like they're living in Toronto, but humans can't know that they exist. So they're trying to like, it's not like really a good situation. Nobody's really happy about this. Like the Fae aren't really happy, but they're just trying to, make things work for them. And as with all fantasy plots, well, not all, but anyways, there's a serial killer kind of like killing iron-born children. So there's basically a lot going on, but most of the characters, the main characters whose chapters you get, they're all trying to figure out like who's killing these kids and like how to stop them when like the rest of Fae society doesn't really seem to care. Alright, so from the jacket, choose your player, the iron-born half-Fae outcast of her royal Fae family, a tempestuous fury exiled to Earth from the immortal realm and hell-bent on revenge, a dutiful Fae prince determined to earn his place on the throne, the prince's brooding guardian burdened with a terrible secret. For centuries, the 8 courts of folk have lived among us, concealed by magic and bound by law to do no harm to humans. This arrangement has long kept peace in the courts until a series of gruesome and ritualistic murders rocks the city of Toronto and threatens to expose fairies to the human world. 4 queer teens, each holding a key piece of the truth behind these murders, must form a tenuous alliance in their effort to track down the mysterious killer behind these crimes. If they fail, they risk the destruction of the fairy and human worlds alike. If that's not bad enough, there's a war brewing between the mortal and immortal realms, and one of these teens is destined to tip the scales. The only question is, which way? Wish them luck, they're going to need it. And this is the first book of a series. Okay, so that's what I'm currently reading. And now we're going to get into what I've already read before. First, this one is a little bit different. It's the Novice, so this is the first book in a series, the Summoner series. I believe there's like 4 books, but I might be wrong. And this one is, all these other ones kind of have to do, like, that I'm going to talk about have to do heavily with, like, the Fae courts and everything. And this one, it's not so much about the Fae. There's, like, elves in this fantasy world. And they're just, like, kind of another race of beings in that world. But I figured, add some variety to this list. And let me just get into this. So this book is about Fletcher. He's the main character. Fletcher's working as a blacksmith's apprentice when he discovers he has the rare ability to summon demons from another world. Subsequently chased from his village for a crime he did not commit, Fletcher must travel with his demon, Ignatius, to an academy for adepts, where the gifted are taught the art of summoning. Along with nobles and commoners, Fletcher endures grueling lessons that will prepare him to serve as a battle mage in the Empire's war against the savage orcs. But sinister forces infect new friendships, and rivalries are formed at the school. With no one but Ignatius by his side, Fletcher must decide where his loyalties lie. As soon as he learns, the fate of the Empire is in his hands. So I've read the first one. I really liked it a lot. And I haven't made it to the rest of the series yet, but I need to because I did really like this one. Okay, this is actually one of, I've read this like a long time ago, and yeah, it holds a special place in my heart, The Iron King, and this is the first book of a trilogy, The Iron Fey. There's a follow-up trilogy to that, and then just recently, the author, Julie Kagawa, published the Iron Raven, which I haven't read yet, but I am very excited to get to. So, where it all started. All right. Megan Chase has a secret destiny, one she could never have imagined. Something has always felt slightly off in Megan's life ever since her father disappeared before her eyes when she was 6. She has never quite fit in at school or at home. When a dark stranger begins watching her from afar and her prankster best friend becomes strangely protective of her, Megan senses that everything she's known is about to change. But she could never have guessed the truth, that she is the daughter of a mythical fairy king and is a pawn in a deadly war. Now Megan will learn just how far she'll go to save someone she cares about, to stop a mysterious evil no fairy creature dare face, and to find love with a young prince who... The summary is cut off. So she might find love with a young prince. Yeah, I really liked the series. And I did read the first trilogy, and then I didn't read the second trilogy, so this is another series I need to finish. I really don't like leaving series unfinished, but at the same time, if y'all saw my TBR list, it's like hundreds and hundreds of books, but I digress. A standalone book, so, if you aren't, willing to commit to jumping into a series, you should read An Enchantment of Ravens. This is by Margaret Rogerson, who I read this book by her, and then the other book is, I think, Sorcery of Thorns, which I also really loved, and then she has a new book coming out this year, so I really like her books. Okay, every enchantment has a price. With a flick of her paintbrush, Isabel creates stunning portraits for a dangerous set of clients, the fair folk. These immortal creatures cannot bake bread or put a pen to paper without crumbling to dust. They crave human craft with a terrible thirst, and they trade valuable enchantments for Isabel's paintings. When she receives her first royal patron, Rook, the Autumn Prince, Isabel makes a deadly mistake. She paints mortal sorrow in his eyes, a weakness that could cost him his throne and even his life. Furious, Rook spirits Isabel away to his kingdom to stand trial for her crime. But something is seriously amiss in his world, and they are attacked from every side. With Isabel and Rook depending upon each other for survival, their alliance blossoms into trust, perhaps even love. A forbidden emotion that would violate the fair folk's ruthless laws, rendering both their lives forfeit. What force could Isabel's paintings conjure that is powerful enough to defy the ancient malice of the fairy courts? Isabel and Rook journey across a knife edge in a lush world where beauty masks corruption and the cost of survival might be more frightening than death itself. Okay, and then we've got just a few more. I think I talk about In Other Lands all the time, but In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. This one is kind of sort of in the vein of the Novice, just because it's not all about the Fae courts or anything, but elves are one of the fantasy races in this book series, and yeah, so this is a book. It's a standalone book as well, and it's about Elliot, a human boy, and he has the ability to see this magical wall out in the country, and that gives him the ability to go over the wall to this other fantasy world that's through the wall. And then there he meets I think he goes there when he's 13, and the book ends when he's 17, and he is just Elliot is very bratty. He's very much a know-it-all and wants everyone to know that he is the smartest, and it's great. I really like him a lot. I like all the characters, but while he's there, he meets some other characters who become his friends, including Serene Heart in the Chaos of Battle, who is an elven warrior. And it's really interesting because the elven culture is kind of the reverse of like human culture, where like in their culture women are the warriors and the men stay home and like tend the house and bake bread. It's very interesting. I like this book a lot. So let me just read you the jacket. So, the borderlands aren't like anywhere else. Don't try to smuggle a phone or any other piece of technology over the wall that marks the border unless you enjoy a fireworks display in your backpack. Ballpoint pens are okay. The elves, harpies, and best of all, as far as Elliot is concerned, mermaids. Elliot? Who's Elliot? Elliot is 13 years old. He's smart and just a tiny bit obnoxious. Sometimes more than a tiny bit. When his class goes on a field trip and he can see a wall that no one else can see, he is given the chance to go to school in the borderlands. It turns out that on the other side of the wall, classes involve a lot more weaponry and fitness training and fewer mermaids than he expected. On the other hand, there is serene heart in the chaos of battle, an elven warrior who is more beautiful than anyone Elliot has ever seen. And then there's her human friend, Luke, sunny, blonde, and annoyingly likable. There are lots of interesting books. There's even the chance Elliot might be able to change the world. So, I love it. And sorry for the bells going off. They're going to be going off for about a minute. 2 more books to get through. Holly Black. I always talk about Holly Black because she's one of my all-time favorite authors. Tithe was one of the first YA books I picked up when I was in high school, way back in like 2005, 2006. I know, so long ago. So she's kind of like, in some ways, to me, like classic YA, but she's still writing and publishing fantastic books, and she just keeps getting better. So, really, this book is what got me into reading a lot of YA books, and it's what got me really interested in books about fairies and the Fae, so I highly recommend it. Alright, in the realm of fairy, 16-year-old Kay is a modern nomad. Fierce and independent, she drifts from place to place with her mother's rock band until an ominous attack forces Kay back to her childhood home. There, amid the blue-collar New Jersey backdrop, Kay finds herself an unwilling pawn in an ancient and violent power struggle between 2 rival fairy kingdoms, a struggle that could very well mean her death. So this is a first book in a trilogy, and it's followed up by Valiant and Ironside, and you can kind of almost read them as standalones in a way. Like Valiant is about some completely different set of characters, and then Ironside follows some other characters, but like all their stories are like intertwining and kind of building up to like how things conclude in Ironside. But I really like them a lot, and I like the characters, especially in this one. They're kind of like gritty, like rough around the edges. They felt very like real, and they come from like some pretty like intense backgrounds, like some really intense personal stuff has happened to them, and that's something like I hadn't really read much in YA, and especially not in like a fantasy YA book, so I really liked it. It's kind of like, I felt like a lot of books at that time were like, well, anyways, they kind of broke the mold for me, so we'll just say it like that. And then finally, last of all, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This was a newer series by her that just ended recently, so it's a trilogy, and then there's a follow-up book that's kind of like short stories about the prince in question, Cardan. So, guard your mortal heart. Jude was 7 when her parents were murdered, and she and her 2 sisters were stolen away to live in the treacherous High Court of Fairy. 10 years later, Jude wants nothing more than to belong there, despite her mortality. But many of the Fae despise humans, especially Prince Cardan, the youngest and wickedest son of the High King. To win a place at the court, she must defy him and face the consequences. As Jude becomes more deeply embroiled in palace intrigues and deceptions, she discovers her own capacity for trickery and bloodshed. But as betrayal threatens to drown the courts of Faerian violence, Jude will need to risk her life in a dangerous alliance to save her sisters and Faerie itself. So, yes, love this trilogy a lot. I love Jude. She is just a very fierce character, and she's just really... Some people think she's unlikable. I think she's great, but, that's just me. So I would just encourage you to check out any of these books. If you're like, hey, those sound interesting, I kind of want to read some Fae books, I would recommend all of these. I think there's something for everyone. And yes, I will, again, in my notes, let you know what's available on Hoopla and Libby. And I hope y'all are having a wonderful week. Don't forget, you can come to the library to check out these books. You can come to our after-school teen programs, which are happening Monday through Friday, 3:30 to 5:30. So yeah, hopefully I will see you soon. Bye!